Hello, everybody. Are we live? Yes, we are live. Hello, and welcome to this scientific discussion and debate on the subject: Is evolution a quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history? And boy, isn't that a mouthful. I mean, it's a great subject to discuss, but it's a lot to say. I really need to come up with some kind of shorthand for it. But we're going to be debating that subject today. My name is Austin Sims. I'm a biology student. I also work in the field of bioinformatics. I have a great passion for science and biology and evolution and common ancestry and natural selection and all that fun stuff. So fascinating to me. I also come from a religious background, so I've studied my fair share of the Bible and spirituality and different world religions. And I'm interested in making public scientific literacy just the absolute best it can be. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I do. And I hope you all enjoy it and you learn some stuff. And Katrina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, my name is Katrina Cook, and I am a professor of nursing at Columbus State University. And this debate here has nothing to do with them; it's not affiliated. But I did not grow up as in the church. I don't have a religious background from my childhood. My parents were, well, my father was atheist, my mom was indifferent, and but when I turned 20 years old, I gave my life to Christ, started believing in Jesus Christ as my Savior, and just had a fascination with the Bible. And I read it from cover to cover. I've been reading it for the past 35 years, and it's just fascinating to me. And I've always also loved science. I did learn evolution in public schools, but even as a child, I thought it sounded ridiculous. So I am a creationist, young earth creationist, and I believe that the creation model is the best solution for unanswered questions that we may have about natural history. And I am a Army veteran.
Yeah. I didn't know you were a professor. That's cool.
Yeah.
What is the distinction between just being a professor and being an instructor? It's like you have to have a PhD to be a professor. What is the
It's
what's
just
the
whatever
difference?
it's the preference of whatever the school wants to call you.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because I am on the tenure track. I'm not tenured yet. January of 2025 was my first date of employment there. So looking to get tenure in about 3 to 5 years.
Nice. Well, I'm rooting for you.
Well,
Good
thank you.
luck. So I guess we should start talking about the debate a little bit, huh?
Sure.
So a while back, I came up with a question that I thought was a really good question to kind of direct conversations about evolution to the kind of meat of the subject, the what evolution actually is, at least as far as what I understand it to be is. And I went out and I asked everybody I could think of, just all the creationist Facebook groups and as many people as I could find, if they would have a scientific discussion with me about this question. I was not really surprised, but disappointed that like nobody wanted to do it. So, Katrina, when you stepped up to take it, I was so excited. I was like, yes, let's go. So, I hope everybody in the audience can give Katrina some props for coming up here. And I think it's a pretty tough challenge, and she's accepted it. So, I think she's shown some real spine, and she definitely deserves a little bit of respect for that, even if not for being, a nurse professor and an Army vet. Major props, major respect for that, Katrina.
Thank you.
So we're gonna discuss this question that I came up with, but I'm not gonna jump into it right away. Let's talk a little bit about the nature of the discussion. And I understand that for a lot of people watching, well, maybe not so much of this crowd yet, but as people filter in, and maybe for my opponent, that the subject of evolution, it touches on deeply held beliefs about origins, purpose, the very nature of reality. And I just want to assure everybody from the onset that I am not trying to change anyone's faith or diminish the significance of whatever spiritual truth they accept today. Nobody's belief or disbelief in any specific deity or the existence or non-existence of just a deity in general should shift as a result of this debate. Uh, we've made it one of our rules that we aren't going to get deep into any theology or philosophy discussion tonight. We're going to try and keep things as scientific as possible. And the question we are here to discuss is evolution a quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history? And this is a question about science. From what I understand of science, the core of the scientific process is the formulation and exploration of quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solutions to unanswered questions and unsolved problems. And of course, eventually there comes a point where you try to disprove your solution, and if you fail, you end up with what's called a theory, and that's kind of what the scientific community stance on evolution has been for a long time, is that they feel everybody has failed to disprove evolutionary theory, so it has remained a theory, which is epistemically very high value in science. It's right up there with laws and facts. So my commitment is to have a respectful, intellectually honest discussion grounded in facts and logical reasoning. And I hope that we are willing to examine ideas that might challenge our preconceptions. I'm certainly going to do my best to do that. So my opening question to Ms. Cook is designed to get right to the, is it all right if I call you Ms. Cook or Katrina or?
Katrina, Dr. Cook, Ms. Cook.
Katrina. My question to Katrina is designed to get right to the heart of what the scientific evidence tells us about how life changes. It's a scenario that directly tests whether populations under certain conditions can diverge to the point where they're no longer able to interbreed with an ancestral population. And this is a fundamental aspect of understanding natural history. I want to explore whether the theory of evolution, as understood by the vast majority of the scientific community, stands up to the rigorous standards for scientific inquiry. Does it provide a framework for understanding observable phenomena? Can we make predictions based on it? And can it be tested and, in principle, proven wrong? I believe that when we apply these scientific criteria, the evidence for evolution is compelling and robust. And I look forward to hearing Katrina's direct answers to my opening question, as it will truly set the stage for a productive and illuminating exchange tonight. So, we're going to begin the debate in a little bit. I would like to briefly state my expectations and reasons for doing this debate. My expectations are that I'm not going to end up debating a single person who will answer my cross-exam question about if a population will speciate in a new environment with an answer something like, oh, absolutely, they'll look exactly the same and will totally be perfectly, interfertile with other populations that the descendants didn't experience the same changes in environment. And I think that's significant because that is the answer which would have to be correct for the answer to the debate subject: is evolution a quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions in natural history? Oh, what a mouthful. For the answer to that to be no, you would have to say no, that, they won't change like that. Or at least that would be data that doesn't support the idea, right? Whereas if the answer is no, that they will look different and they likely won't be able to produce non-hybrid fertile offspring with other populations they share common ancestors with, I think that is undeniably data that supports evolution. And I definitely think it's not data which doesn't support evolution. which is what my opponent and any future opponents will need to win this particular debate topic. So I've issued this debate as kind of the last step on my project before I kind of change my direction. I've up till now been studying both creationism and evolution as kind of parallel models of thinking. And I've been thinking about pivoting to focusing more on the sociological aspects of creationism. And so if the debate goes the way I anticipate it will, that is kind of the future of this channel. So this debate, I think, has major implications, at least for me. I think it's a good debate. It has value and merit. I think in kind of a broad sense, the scientific community and creationism has been debating this for decades, but I don't know if anybody's ever actually put it into like explicit words like this. So I think that's one of the strengths of this debate. And I want to call on my opponent to steelman as strongly as possible my position and to look at the data that supports evolution and ask herself if it is data that supports evolution or if it isn't. I've constructed this debate to put the onus on her to present verifiable data and statistical analysis that does not support evolution. I hope and suppose she doesn't mind this since she accepted the challenge. So now moving on, before we begin the debate, I think it's a good idea for us to define some relevant terms. At least I'm gonna clarify my definitions for these terms because my concern is that if in the debate, when we're using these terms, if we mean something other than what I'm defining here, we may not be talking about the same thing. So first, I want to define my definition for evolution. I define evolution as the change in heritable characteristics or genetic alleles of populations of living organisms over time. That is all every kind of evolution is: macroevolution, microevolution. I anticipate that Katrina is going to argue that there are special kinds of evolution that mean something other than that, and that it is these types of evolution that she takes issue with. But it is my opinion that in reality, even what she refers to as macroevolution is just that. It's change in the heritable characteristics of populations of living organisms over time. Falsifiable. When I use the term falsifiable, I mean it as something that it is possible to prove wrong with repeatable observations or experimental data. The Venus de Milo is beautiful is an example of something that's unfalsifiable. We can't create a repeatable experiment or perform an observation that disproves this idea. It's a subjective matter opinion. The Venus de Milo is constructed of Munster cheese is an example of something falsifiable. We can definitely prove that wrong by trying to, bust a hunk of it off and chew on it. It kind of tastes like stone. Speciation. Speciation is a form of change over time wherein a population of living organisms experiences enough change so as to become infertile with an ancestral form. So, for instance, generation 1 would not be capable of producing fertile non-hybrid offspring with a member of generation 500,000, for instance. I'm hoping and assuming that the audience is kind of familiar enough with the subject that we don't really need to define every single term. Like, I'm hoping everybody knows what a population is and an ecosystem. So we won't get into those too much. And if you understand those definitions and you're cool with them, we can start getting into the cross exam. Oh no, I think she may have frozen. Katrina, are you there? We lost her. Hopefully she'll be back in a second.
Usually she'll be back. Usually people will be right back. Just got dropped.
Yeah.
What's up, Chris? How you doing?
Hey, Chris, good to see you. Here we go. We lost you there for a second, Katrina. Good to have you back.
It's stormy here. I have no electricity.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Whew.
Thankfully, I have my computer is charged up enough, and I'm using my hotspot on my phone. So hopefully we can get through this.
I was more concerned that if it's anything like where it is here, that you're very hot right now and you don't have any AC if your power went out. It was really
hot until it stormed. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's no problem. Technology, what are you going to do? So did you catch the definitions? Are those all copacetic? And
that's definition that I
sorry? I missed that. No, sorry.
The last definition was speciation.
Okay, speciation is where we left off.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get through this.
Oh, speciation was the last one. So, yep, you got them all.
The last that I heard. Okay.
Yeah. So, are you ready to jump into the opening cross-exam question?
Sure.
All right, I'm just going to pop it up on the stage so that we have a picture of it here. So, my question for tonight. Suppose you take a population of adaptable living organisms and you place them in a different environment. Suppose that environment is different enough that they will need to experiment with new niches and behaviors to survive, but not so different or hostile that they will starve and go extinct. Like, let's assume there's some food in this environment and not zero food, for instance. So the heart of the question is, do you think that in 500,000 generations, that this population will still look the same and be able to form fertile, non-hybrid offspring with descendants of the original population who weren't exhibited to the same change in environment? And to help you out even further, as a rubric for your response, here's what my response would be to that question. I think that no, generation 500,000 will not look anything like generation 1. They will not be capable of producing fertile non-hybrid offspring together. I think they will have adapted too much in order to survive their extreme change in environment. I think these adaptations are likely to result in the development of either a sexually selective, morphological, or genetic barrier to reproduction, perhaps even all three. We call these pre-zygotic or post-zygotic barriers in biology. They're very interesting. It's a pivotal part of the species concept. And I think even a single of these barriers is sufficient to cause the cessation of horizontal gene flow between these populations, which would allow for disparate adaptations to stack up on top of fundamental similarities, exactly as evolution predicts, describes, and explains. I think at best, they might be able to produce infertile hybrid offspring, like when lions and tigers mate, they sometimes produce a hybrid offspring that is not capable of producing offspring itself. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that I kind of already know Katrina's answer will be to affirm that they will speciate. So I suspect she will so affirm, and then she will hope to move on to make other arguments that explain why she believes the fact that the hypothetical population will speciate is not significant data supporting evolution. I expect these arguments to be in the vein of microevolution or change within kind, genetic limits, and irreducible complexity. So I want to take a very quick moment to discuss those. As previously discussed, based on the definition I'm using, speciation in scientific nomenclature is macroevolution. So I would not define it as microevolution. We can maybe discuss that a little bit more. I'm expecting that the term kind is going to come into play. I'm hoping Katrina came prepared to provide a scientific definition for kind, and we're going to maybe try to stress test it a little bit. I think it has some major weaknesses and issues, like it flits around from the taxonomic levels to kingdom to family to species at the user's convenience, and isn't significantly distinct enough from any of those taxa to have its own unique valid sound usage. But perhaps Katrina will provide us with a scientific meaning for the term tonight. And genetic limits. Genetic limits, it's the idea that heritable variation and natural selection has limits in what it can create. I am interested to see how this argument applies to the debate, because if heritable variation and natural selection can create enough new information or features as to cause speciation, then it's tough to see how genetic limits that do exist, even if they do, are going to be enough to stop the smallest unit of macroevolution, speciation, from occurring, or to prevent them from adding up. So we'll get into that a little bit. We'll talk about what my opponent means by new information, and we'll discuss how genetic replication over generations produces new forms and traits by modifying the existing genome. And lastly, irreducible complexity. So this is the concept that complex features cannot be assembled in a stepwise incremental fashion because removing one part renders the system useless. So we will definitely talk about irreducible complexity a little bit, and we'll try to find some examples of irreducibly complex biological systems, and we'll kind of stress test and talk about those a little bit. And so I think with that, I'm ready to throw it over to you, Katrina, to offer some opening statements, respond to the question, and begin laying out your case so that we may dissect it and see if it holds water.
All right, so I did answer your question. I answered this question and the other question that you posed. And I also prepared a PowerPoint on why creation rather than evolution is a better possible solution for natural history. So with that said, so the answer to this question is yes. The population of a species that can breed with all others of the same species within the population will always have offspring. Wait a minute, hold on. So let me start by saying that so a change in environment that is detrimental to the species will result in extinction. So that population will not be able to reach 500,000 generations in the first place. So just to be clear, we're talking about a viable environment. So the question is yes, the population of a species that can breed with all others of the same species within the population will always have offspring born with the same basic phylogeny and morphology as the original species population, especially in an environment conducive to survival. Major phylogenetic and morphologic changes claimed by evolutionists are merely those that have only been speculated to have occurred in the distant past, such as a giraffe's long neck, a tiger's stripes, or a camel's hump. Evolutionists frequently speak of populations evolving because of genetic drift and or gene flow. However, genetic drift and gene flow are broad terms and concepts invented to reframe the ancient biological process of reproduction in a modern evolutionary framework. For millennia, what we have realistically observed were offspring born from one parent couple at a time, inheriting the same phylogenetic characteristics as the parents. This is true even in selective breeding practices performed by humans on various kinds of animals, which is why a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are still dogs that could breed with each other, factoring out the size differences. Genetic drift describes mutation rates which increase because of isolation of and inbreeding within a population. Gene flow describes mutation rates which decrease because of migration of individuals of the population and breeding with individuals of other populations. Genetic drift leads to increases in deformities and death rates, while gene flow reduces the accumulation of harmful mutations. The question does not address population size or whether the population remains in isolation over the entire 500,000 generations. Mutations spreading through a small inbreeding population will lead to extinction regardless of the environment. However, a large population with free gene flow will have fewer detrimental effects from mutations. It is nearly impossible to test 500,000 generations, which makes the evolution testable. This is not testable for 500,000 generations. The answer will not be known until after the 500,000th generation has descended from the original parents. Evolution is being falsified in real time. For example, after 75,000 generations of E. coli, which is 37 years, Richard Linsky, who handed the research over to Jeffrey Barrett, has not reported the creation of a new species or genus, and the adaptation he reported is attributed to a gene expression by a gene already inherited in the bacteria. The population still exclusively consists of E. coli. Shao and others in 2018 created a single chromosome yeast from 18 chromosomes, but the global gene transcription in the yeast offspring was nearly identical to that of the parent yeast. Both examples negate the hypothesis that new species can form over time. Based on these and other studies and what has been observed in real time, my prediction is that after 500,000 generations, the population will still have basically the same morphology and phylogeny and be able to reproduce fertile, non-hybrid offspring with the descendants of the original population who weren't subjected to the same change in environment. So how do we test my prediction? Wait 250 years to find out? Or 2,500 years? Or 25,000 years? By what mechanism does nature influence living organisms? Genes in living organisms respond to each organism's environments by downregulating or upregulating proteins to promote changes within the organism. These changes only result in superficial adaptations, not major phylogenetic or morphological changes that result in the offspring population being unrecognizable from the parent populations. No one has ever observed evolution happening in real time or in real life. We've heard scientists speculating that that's what happened in the past, but the past is not testable or repeatable. And that's my answer.
Okay. So I guess I think you answered the question right. I believe you said yes, that they will look different and they won't be able to produce fertile non-hybrid offspring.
They will look the same. The question is, do you think that after 500 generations that they will still look the same?
After 500,000 generations in the new environment, yeah, will they look the same?
They will basically look the same. They will have the same morphology and the same phylogeny as the parent population.
They'll have the same morphology. And they'll have the same phylogeny. You think they'll have the same morphology as well?
Yes, I do.
Interesting. Are you familiar with the Dodd incipient sexual separation of Drosophila experiment?
No.
So the Dodd incipient sexual separation of Drosophila experiment, it's an experiment designed and performed by Diane Dodd, where she took populations of Drosophila and separated them. She took a single population, rather, and separated it into two different populations. And she fiddled with their environment. She changed the food sources available in one environment. I think one environment was feeding on sucrose, and the other environment they were feeding on a different compound. It was digestible and palatable for them, but it wasn't as nutritious. So what happened is, depending on what other differences between the two populations' environments occur, is anywhere from 30,000 to 70,000 generations later, they are significantly morphologically different. They will no longer sexually select each other as mates. So I think this experiment, what occurs in fruit fly populations, in biology, you can often apply what you learn about one species to other species. In this case, I think what we learned about fruit flies shows that 500,000 generations is way more than enough, that they will undergo significant morphological changes, especially if there's an extremely different environment. You don't think that's the case? I kind of thought you were going to
No,
say
I don't
that
think
yes,
that's
it
the
was.
case because all of the cases that we have available in research are done in a laboratory under controlled conditions, and it's done by artificial selection. It's not natural selection. Artificial selection is where the researcher is the one that's manipulating the genes and manipulating the outcomes and manipulating the environment. This doesn't happen in nature. So no, I mean, if you have a natural environment and you're placing a population in a natural environment, that's not going to happen. But natural, artificial selection happens all the time with breeding. I mean, we've been doing it since humans have been on the earth.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's data that supports evolution, is the fact that artificial selection is powerful in producing new morphologies. I
But
think
it's not.
it will take longer for nature to produce a similar change. That's why I increased the number of generations significantly in the hypothetical.
You still can't test it because you can't test 500,000 generations.
You can test 30
Of
to 70,000 generations in Drosophila or other species that have relatively fast generation times. And
right under controlled environments.
you can see morphological change occurring in populations of other organisms, like in dogs. So Chihuahuas, for instance, they have morphologically changed enough that there's tons of other technically Canis domesticus species that will not sexually select them as mates, partly because of behavioral issues and partly because of morphological difficulties. So I just that
Well,
answer totally confuses me, to say that they won't change after 500,000 generations, that they'll look basically the same and still be able to produce fertile non-hybrid offspring with other populations. That seems to go against the data.
so what I'm talking about is dogs can still breed with other dogs. A Chihuahua can still breed with another dog, as long as they have the same number of chromosomes. The behavioral differences are basically preferences. They have nothing to do with the environment or the ability to be fertile with that population. The ability to be fertile with that population still remains. So it's there are all kinds of factors that go into this question that are being ignored. So that's why I think that they will have the basic. When I say morphology, I'm talking about the same. Like they'll still be the same genus. They'll still be the same kind. And the way I um, define kind is that they can reproduce with each other and produce fertile offspring that can also reproduce. So
Okay.
I still
Let's
think that they'll be
so
able to mate. They'll have the ability to mate.
I think what we're talking about here is something called post-zygotic versus pre-zygotic barriers. Are you familiar with that concept?
A little bit.
So a post-zygotic barrier is it's useful. Both of the concepts are useful for defining a species. When the species concept starts to get kind of wonky, when like with dogs and other species where there's a large amount of variety and yet hybridization is still possible, there's these two heuristics that we use, and they're called pre-zygotic and post-zygotic barriers. The issue when it comes to Chihuahuas and other populations of Canis domesticus are the pre-zygotic barriers. As you have stated correctly, they don't have post-zygotic barriers. If the gametes join in the right situation, you could technically get like a Great Dane Chihuahua hybrid. The problem is the pre-zygotic barriers, and that is things like sexual selection, whether or not they'll select each other as mates.
Right.
In the case of Chihuahuas and other dogs, a Great Dane isn't going to select a Chihuahua as a mate. It'll have a behavioral pre-zygotic barrier in that it's most likely to see a Chihuahua as dinner. That is the behavior, that is the interaction that is most likely to occur ecologically between a Chihuahua and a Great Dane. Is the Great Dane's going to predate on the Chihuahua. It's not going to choose it as a mate. So that would be a pre-zygotic barrier. But we can pivot a little bit because the kind word has been brought up. Kind is in play. So let's talk about kind a little bit. You said your definition of kind centers around sexual compatibility. Is that correct?
No, it's not sexual compatibility. It's more of sexual. It's more of chromosome compatibility.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to do with the chromosomes. So if you, I mean, like for example, whenever you cross a horse and a donkey, the offspring, if it's a male, it's going to be infertile because of the different number of chromosomes. And then you have a mule that has an odd number of chromosomes. So chromosomal differences are what prevent mating between various species. And I want to talk about with the taxonomic classifications that we have today, those were invented just to categorize different animals. And it was before all of the different animals were even known. So it's just a human classification. It means nothing as far as nature goes. In nature, animals are going to reproduce when they can reproduce. So the taxonomic classifications, to me, are pretty much irrelevant.
So there are a couple of there are, I think, three different types of compatibility that come into play when it comes to populations sexually selecting each other. And a big part of what defines what a species is its own behavior. Species themselves partly choose what their species is by choosing what they will try to mate with. But beyond that simpler statement, there's a more complex version with three basic things. You've got, like you said, there's chromosomal compatibility, genetic compatibility. Do we have the right number of chromosomes so things match up in a way that we can produce a viable, stable individual with these gametes combining? There's morphological compatibility. Does the male of the species have the anatomical equipment necessary to successfully create sexual contact? If they don't, then they won't be morphologically compatible. And I think this is one of the issues with like the Great Dane Chihuahua scenario. There's some morphological difficulties there. And then there's the behavioral compatibility. It's the latter two. It's the morphological and behavioral compatibility that makes the likelihood of a Chihuahua Great Dane hybrid extremely low, even if it is technically possible and could be achieved with like intervention or, test tube gamete combination, things like that. So you said the definition of kind is not based on sexual compatibility. Is that
right? Necessarily. It's based on chromosomal compatibility. And for the behavioral part, I would agree with you had I not seen a dog trying to hump a cat.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's behavioral. They do they're just animals.
I think in that specific instance, that dog would not have humped a cat if another dog was available. Does that seem like something reasonable? Does that make sense? You
That
can Animals will select something that's less than ideal if it's the only thing available.
that's I would agree with that, but that has nothing to do with um, the ability to reproduce with that animal, because they're going to do what they are created to do. They are innate, and they will sexually reproduce whenever. The fact that a dog is humping a cat doesn't take away from the cat and the dog being able to reproduce. They just can't reproduce together. They can't come together and reproduce a viable offspring. So kind has to do with the ability to produce viable offspring that are also fertile, that can reproduce viable offspring.
So okay, yeah, that's kind of what I meant by the kind concept is defined by sexual compatibility. For my understanding of it, the most perfect version of two organisms being the same species is when they're perfectly morphologically compatible. They're the most ideal sexually selective mate, and they also their behavior matches up so that you don't need extreme anomalies or bizarre occurrences for them to achieve sexual contact. That is when two organisms have those three things together, that is the most perfect version of two things being the same species. Agreed?
Well, again, species is irrelevant because there are hybrids that are mating in the wild. Well, there are a couple of cases where hybrids have mated in the wild. I mean, where two animals have mated in the wild and produced a hybrid um, that is not fertile. So I can't recall the article that I read about it, but um, so it's just, I think, I just think the entire taxonomic classification system is really irrelevant. It's only used for scientists who want to categorize or uh, categorize their work, what they're doing, what they're working on, how they're working on it, and to be very specific and scientific. But
Yeah,
we really
yeah.
don't need that. We know experientially and but through observation that animals that can mate and produce viable offspring that can then mate with that same kind is how nature truly is.
So taxonomy is useful for communication. If two researchers on opposite sides of the world are trying to talk about the same plant, it's helpful if they don't have completely different ways of referring to it. So I
Right,
do
I
think
agree.
taxonomy is useful in that way.
Right, it's useful in in a scientific sense.
Yeah,
It's not useful practically, because if I ask you what kind of pet do you have, if you tell me you have a pet, what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me a cat or a dog or a snake or whatever.
I don't know. I've been studying taxonomy a lot lately. I might be like Villainous domesticus, but yeah,
Yeah, you you might.
I'm a nerd though.
Yeah,
So can I ask some questions to kind of stress test the kind concept a little bit?
sure.
So one of the first things that comes to mind is how do you apply it? Can you apply it to like some real world examples? Like if I pull up a picture of Myocetus, what kind are you going to put that in? Is that going to be a whale kind or a three-toed ungulate quadrupedal land mammal kind? Does
It
that
doesn't
is
matter.
that making
It
sense?
doesn't matter because whales reproduce with whales. It doesn't matter what. I mean, I know that a whale kind will reproduce with the whale kind. If it's a orca, if it's a uh, humpback whale, we do have categories I mean, kinds are just a practical way of naming the animals. I know it as a humpback whale. I know it as a killer whale. I know it as a hammerhead shark. I know it as a, I don't know, tiger.
Well, I bring Myocetus up specifically because it's a fossil organism. So we can't observe its behavior. We can't see what it will or won't mate with. We kind of have to go on some other method if we're going to taxonomize. Does that make sense?
Well, again, a fossil is irrelevant because you cannot test something that has already died. You have no way to connect the ancestral descendant relationship. So it really doesn't matter.
You can't test it by observing its behavior, but
But
is there other
fossil,
methods?
yeah, looking at the fossil record is purely subjective. You can look at a fossil and make anything that you want to make out of it. So your guess is as good as mine as to how this should look. It's artist preference.
Okay, so when we're talking about the kind concept of like how it plays out in sexual reproduction, if if I think there's a certain there's some stumbling blocks. One of the big ones I think of is asexual organisms. How would you apply the kinds concept to asexual organisms like bacteria or protists that reproduce asexually? They don't it's not a pair of parent chromosomes, it's a single organism's chromosomes, so they inherently match each other. Is every single member of such a species technically a kind by that taxonomic system?
It can be, sure. I mean, because what's the point of categorizing these anyway? It's just to communicate with other scientists. If I know that I have a yeast infection, I'm going to call it yeast. I don't need to know what kind it is. I need to know how to cure it. If I have a urinary tract infection, or if I have, some type of infection, I just want to know that I can have it treated and be well. So these taxonomic classifications are for scientists. I agree with that. They're necessary for that, for research and for the scientific community. But when you're talking about kinds, if you have an asexual organism, then that's its own kind. You don't need another one. So what's the point?
So kind of what I'm stress testing here for is a little bit, and I can frame this in the history of taxonomy itself a little bit. Are you familiar with the construction of taxonomy? Have you ever heard of Carl Linnaeus and
Oh yeah.
how taxonomy? So this will be more of a refresher for you. So Carl Linnaeus, he actually was a creationist.
Yeah.
Who was convinced of species fixity. He thought the species didn't change very much. He just wanted a system to organize, categorize, and classify living things as kind of a boon for natural history. He thought what he was going out and doing was cataloging all of God's creations. And one of the reasons he decided to do that was because other contemporary taxonomic systems were not great. They had really long, convoluted, unwieldy names and inconsistent applications of parameters, really bad inconsistency, and arbitrary methods. And so, kind of what I was testing for there a little bit is things like that. And I think we found one, because if every single protist individual can be considered its own kind, I think your kind systematic then quickly becomes very arbitrary.
Well, the taxonomic system in itself is, you still can't categorize every single organism on the planet into, I mean, its only purpose is to communicate with other scientists. Um, so, but still, asexual organism is still going to only reproduce itself. Sexual organism is only going to reproduce with another of the same kind. So the naming is just for communication purposes.
I think
So I agree with you on that. So it's necessary for scientific and communication and research.
Naming is for sure one of the purposes. I think one thing I love, one saying in science that I absolutely love, is the saying, "We stand on the shoulders of giants." Linnaeus didn't just give us a big list of names, he gave us a system so that we never have to start constructing our catalog of living things from the ground up again. He gave us this incredible starting block in a sense, and we do use this in incredible ways by categorizing plants and their relatedness and other animals. Botanical, zoological, mycological populations are easier to identify, they're easier to study, and that allows us to create medicines, to tweak our conservation efforts. I do think taxonomy is incredibly useful, actually. I would push back against the argument that it is only useful for scientists and only useful for communication. I think it is much more broadly useful than that. Huh. I think I had another question I wanted to kind of try and stress test the kind concept with, but I think I've already kind of gotten some insight into it there. So I think I want to take a second. We've so far we asked the speciation question. We talked about sexual selection. We talked about defining the species concept, and we've talked about kinds. I think there's like two more other things that I'm prepared for you to bring forth as an argument that there can be said to be data that does not support evolution. Did you want to get into those now a little bit?
The other two questions you asked, was it one or two?
I think it was
the other question.
I think you wanted to maybe bring up either irreducible complexity, or we wanted to maybe talk about genetic limits a little bit.
Well, you did ask another question, so I have prepared an answer. So
I'm not sure which question, but what was the question?
So it's the question of this debate.
Yeah.
Is evolution a quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history? So I did answer that. Would you like me to proceed?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is going to be a Q&A section later, Ember, and Breakfast Tacos. I've seen you ask your question several times. We'll try to get it onto the list. I'm not sure I understand your question, but we'll ask it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just wanted to do a little housekeeping there.
Okay. So your question: is evolution a quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history? So quantifiable, my definition is it's able to be expressed as an amount, quantity, or numerical value. And falsifiable is precise claims that can be tested and then discarded if they don't hold up under testing. The answer to the quantifiable question is a resounding no, because the claim of evolution theory is that changes occur so slowly that they cannot be observed. Since they cannot be observed, they cannot be measured and recorded. The answer to the falsifiable question is yes, because many claims of evolution have been tested and found to be false. Science has been successfully used to show that evolution cannot and did not happen. The answer to the question of evolution being a possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history is another resounding no, because current biological processes consistently show that descent only occurs within existing species without any new species being created. Evolution is a theory based on ideas about historical findings that cannot be observed and tested in real time. Evolutionary claims about the historical data are purely conjecture. Furthermore, evolution does not line up with the current data. However, we must make sure that we are defining evolution correctly. One biological book defines evolution as changes in heritable traits in organisms through successive generations. And that's what you mentioned earlier. So, this biology book agrees with that. But most people do not need to be convinced of this definition. We all agree, creationists alike, agree that changes do happen. These changes are natural phenomena that can be measured in real time and attributed to recessive or dominant gene expression. The classic definition of evolution is that all living things are modified descendants of a common ancestor that lived in the distant past, or as Charles Darwin articulated it, descent with modification by means of natural selection. Evolutionists claim that changes in heritable traits lead to or cause phylogenetic changes that produce completely new species, genera, families, and orders. They claim that it happened in the past and that it is happening now at such a slow rate that we cannot possibly observe it. This is not empirical science. In fact, slow, unobservable processes are contradictory to biological life. In biological organisms, the smallest unit of life is the cell, which contains millions to trillions of smaller subatomic parts that operate at breakneck speed to maintain homeostasis and preserve life. These operations cannot be performed without all the necessary parts that cause the cell to function in a manner conducive to survival. The parts could not evolve separately, they could not exist independently, and they could not sit idly by waiting for other parts to evolve.
So I do think evolution is quantifiable, falsifiable, and possible. So I'll get into that and respond to some of your points there a little bit. I think there are multiple ways that we can quantify evolution, and taxonomy is one of them. Taxonomy helps us quantify evolution because it shows all of the living organisms on the planet sorting into pretty neatly into nested hierarchies that gradually get more specific and form this kind of tree-like branching structure. That's one way we quantify it. Then there's also population genetics. That's a major way that we quantify evolution, is using populational genetical mathematics. Then there's comparative genomics. We can quantify evolution via comparative genomics by looking at, let's bring the whales back up. They're morphologically and physiologically similar to a lot of these fossil species that we've found. And those fossil species are three-toed, ungulate, quadruped land mammals. So if a whale is more genetically similar to a quadruped, ungulate land mammal than any other organism, that is not only a quantification of evolutionary relationships, it also is a second line of evidence that matches that first morphological line of evidence. And then when you've got multiple lines of evidence, that's when something is a lot more reliable as a possible solution. So that speaks to the quantifiability of it. The falsifiability of evolution, we both agreed here that evolution is falsifiable. I absolutely do think evolution is falsifiable. I think that the issue, and there is some confusion, sometimes creationists will make the argument that evolution isn't falsifiable, that you can never find data that will cause the scientific community to abandon evolution. And I think that's maybe not quite true. I think you would have to have found different data in the past. So, like, for instance, if we had looked into the archaeological record, what's sometimes called the geologic column or the fossil record, and we had seen nothing but modern species, no matter how deeply we delve, that would have been data that falsified evolution. If we had made genomic comparisons between species and found, there isn't a significant level of similarity between any of these species at all, that would have been data that falsifies evolution. But we found the opposite. So that speaks to the falsifiability a little bit. For possibility, I'm surprised you say you don't think it's possible, because I think creationists need some level of evolution and common ancestry, especially the young Earth now, because the idea is that all of the modern array of species is descended from the originomes, or is it, they're called the originomes or something like it's a baraminological term. I have studied a little bit. It's hard to find baraminological resources sometimes, but they would have diversified from the survivors that got off the ark. So that in a way is kind of like evolutionary change, and that has to be possible for that model to work. So I think it's a possibility. It has to be a possibility in both models for it to work. So quantifiable, falsifiable, possible, check, check, check. And then what I do want to, I think, and this is kind of pedantic, but I think it's important. You said that the cell is the smallest unit of a living thing. I don't think that's actually accurate, because we have found free-floating genetic material in stable populations. So there's this idea. Are you familiar with the concept of 4 levels of organization in a living organism? That it starts off with you as an organism, then you as a colony of cells, then the community within the cells, and then the genetic material within the communities within the cells.
Kind of indirectly, yeah. But I mean, what difference does it make? Because the cell is still cannot, those components cannot function outside of the cell. So the cell.
Well, the exact example is an example of a component of the cell, genetic material, a strand of DNA, a polynucleotide existing outside of a modern somatic organism.
In what conditions?
I'm not as familiar on that one. I think it's like, obviously they're microscopic.
Right.
I imagine probably they would exist most in a temperate environment. They have some bizarre word. They're called like viriolas or something. It sounds like a combination of the words virus and ravioli. Have you ever heard of
these? About vacuoles?
No, the vacuole that's an organelle in the cell. I'm talking about straight up polynucleotides living outside of the cell. I think I have the terminology somewhere here. I'm searching for it right now. We just did a lab on evolution in my biology lab class that I'm taking right now. Viroids. Viroids are single free living genes. They're genes. So you know what genes are, right? They're polynucleotides. It's a sugar backbone with nitrogenous bases that pair with each other, and apparently they can exist outside of a cell. It doesn't say anything about what kind of environment or anything like that they live in. But I remember seeing the diagram of them, and they do kind of look like little, they look kind of like little spaghetti strands.
Okay, so if that is the case, then I don't see what bearing that has on anything, because it is not existing outside of a body, or I mean, it's still within a living organism, right?
No, it's a component of a cell that are free living. They're not inside of a cell. It's the polynucleotide structure that would typically be found inside a cell, but it's free living. It's not depending on a cell for energy or duplication. They can do that, but the difference is when these levels of organization cooperate with each other, survival, replication, all of those things dramatically improve. So that is the driving force behind the major evolutionary changes that resulted in those 4 layers of organization. At least that's the popular theory. I think it's more good data that supports evolution.
I don't think it supports evolution, because you still don't, I mean, just because something is discovered doesn't mean that you are showing that evolution happens. It's like you're comparing apples and oranges. So evolution, you still have to have changes, but just discovering a new something that we've never seen before is not proof of evolution. It's not evidence. It's not, I mean, yeah, it's quantifiable, but it's not quantifiable showing that evolution has taken place. So, and when you said that evolution is quantifiable, you mentioned looking at fossils. Well, you're looking at similarities. Well, what's similar to you might not be similar to me. I mean, it's like um, looking at clouds and seeing a teddy bear or a poodle. Is subjective. And the fossils, you cannot establish any kind of ancestral descendant relationship looking at a fossil. All you're seeing is a dead animal that has fossilized. You can't determine heredity. So you don't know if that thing evolved. I mean, all you're seeing is that dead animal. So you're assuming evolution because of what layer it's in, but that doesn't tell you anything. It's just how it happened to have layered after the flood. That's what creationists believe. So you have to, in order for evolution to be true, you have to have some kind of ancestral descendant relationship established, and there are none. There are no transitional forms. There are no ancestral descendant relationships.
So I think, in my view, evolution is about a convergence of evidence. You don't just look at fossils.
Hold on, my computer's about to die. I'm probably gonna have to do this on my phone.
Okay.
I still have no electricity, so just keep going. If we cut off, then I'll go to my phone.
So evolution is it's a convergence of evidence. You're correct that you can't like observe dinosaurs evolving into birds over time, but you can look at fossil evidence and see things like Archaeopteryx, like mini raptor, and then you can do embryological comparisons and genetic comparisons, and that's two other lines of evidence that fit the fossil evidence, like in the example of whales with their three-toed ungulate fossils that seem to be whale ancestors, and then the fact that whales are genetically most similar to hippopotamuses, which are ungulate quadruped land mammals. And then there's embryological evidence as well. There's all these different lines of evidence that fit each other. Like, for instance, you may not know this, I actually asked my biology class lab instructor about this, and he didn't know. There are instances of whales and dolphins being born with legs. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. But that doesn't make it established. That doesn't make a relationship established between land animals and whales. There's no way to establish that
fits the model, is all I'm saying. I'm not talking about like overwhelming proof. I'm looking for data that fits the model or doesn't fit the model.
It fits the model because you want it to fit the model. You're looking for evidence to prove the model, and that's not scientific. It's not experimental. It's not experiential. It's not using the scientific method to establish a causal relationship. What you're doing with evolution is you're looking at past history and you're coming to a conclusion about what happened in the past based on what something looks like. That is purely subjective. And that is why, even though evolution is falsifiable, it's not quantifiable. And the thing, just because something is falsifiable doesn't make it science. That was a philosopher who came up with that idea. Something being falsifiable doesn't make it science. Evolution is not a science based on any type of scientific method. So it's purely subjective.
So all I was saying is that if you construct this model, you can find all this evidence that fits the model well. It supports the model, and it doesn't contradict the model. Like, if we had looked in the fossil record and seen these three-toed ungulate quadruped land mammals that look like they might be whale ancestors, and then we tested whale genomics and compared them to modern three-toed quadruped ungulate land mammals, we had found there wasn't a significant level of similarity. Like, for instance, that a whale was more genetically similar to a fish than an ungulate three-toed land mammal. That would have been data that didn't support the model. But the fact that they are more similar to an ungulate land mammal quadruped is data that does fit the model. So that was kind of the whole point of the debate, is I'm trying to find any scrap of data whatsoever that doesn't fit the model of evolution. And I think you started to bring another one up. I think if you want to, we can transition to that, or we can keep talking about whales a little bit longer. I have a doozy in the chamber about apoptosis that I would love to share with you if we do, or we can pivot to irreducible complexity. You started to bring that up a little bit. So
the data also fits creation. So what you're doing is you're taking data from the past, you're taking information from the past, and you're trying to come up with an explanation about what happened in the past. So the data also fits creation. It doesn't just fit evolution. But the reason evolution cannot be the possible solution is because you don't see evolution happening in real time. You don't see, what we see are each kind reproducing after its own kind. That's all we see in real time. That's all we see in real life. You don't see changes that are that make a totally different organism. That nobody has ever seen that. So the data fits creation. The data may fit evolution, but it fits creation more and more solid. And so creation would be the better explanation, or the better solution for natural history.
Okay, I think I'm fairly satisfied with that. I think I just, gosh, I don't want to be like, haha, gotcha. But to be fair, we don't see creation happening in real time either.
That's right. And I have a PowerPoint on that.
Oh, okay. Do you want to share your screen and take us through it?
Well, my battery's probably going to die.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, if we can't get through it, we can maybe set up another time and go through it. I would love to do that. You've been absolutely lovely so far, Katrina. I'm loving your conversation.
Thank you.
So,
okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. Well,
yes.
I have no idea how to work this thing.
And I think we're getting pretty close to maybe drawing the back and forth segment to a close, and then we'll do some concluding statements, and then we'll go to Q&A.
What happened to our host?
I'm here.
I would like to share my screen, but I have no idea how.
Just go to the bottom there and just hit that plus sign.
Oh.
See the plus sign?
I do. Oh, share
and
screen.
It'll say share screen, okay. And it'll give you, it'll allow you to pick from whatever's on your screen.
Hold up.
And once it comes up in the little box, I think you have to click on it, Austin.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I am also doing this on my phone because my laptop is real cheap and doesn't run streaming very. Surprisingly, streaming takes a lot of bandwidth. I didn't realize just how draining it can be on a computer. I cheaped out, and I should have gotten a better one. Oh well, lesson learned. Let's see here. What am I looking for, Dave?
There should be a square just like where we join. Like where I am underneath the screen there.
Yeah, I see new layout, spotlight layout, group layout, solo layout.
No, but lower than that. Where Katrina and I are down there. There should be another box showed up.
Oh, okay.
Click on that.
Boom. Is that it?
That's it.
There you go.
Well, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the case for creation as the only
Wait.
Oh.
We see your screen,
switch,
but you're not on the right window or tab.
Oh,
switch.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, switch screens, Katrina.
I have no idea how to do that. Okay. Sorry.
Take that one down. Hit stop share on the bottom there.
We're all professionals over here. We're rocking.
We'll get you.
We're rocking and rolling.
Yeah. You have your PowerPoint up right now, right?
Hang on.
You want to pull that up first.
Okay, PowerPoint is up.
Okay, now go to share and select share screen again, and make sure you click on the one that is your PowerPoint screen.
Okay.
It's all right. I gotta do it all the time.
This is why I haven't started my YouTube channel yet. Do I do the entire screen?
I'll watch your stuff.
You just got to do it. You'll learn how to do it as you do it. That's all. You just got to dive in.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you've got up, then Austin, you got to click on it again when she pulls it up.
I'm waiting for it to show up. I'm not seeing it yet.
Well, you know what? I might just say forget this.
Well, Mike said to send the PowerPoint to him, maybe? Is that what you mean, Mike?
There's the same thing on here that says share slides. Do I not do that one?
No, that's the one you would do. And then no. So that will let you share slides that you've already uploaded to StreamYard.
Oh, okay.
You want to share your screen.
Okay, share my screen. I'm gonna try this again before my battery goes out. I'm so sorry, y'all.
It's all right.
All right.
When you hit share screen, you should get a menu, and it should list the different screens on there.
It says tab, window, or entire screen.
Right. You want to click over to. Do you have it opened in a separate window? Then click over to window, whichever one says your PowerPoint under it.
You might need entire screen.
There's a drop down under each one, and one of them should say whatever your PowerPoint is named.
Well, it's not even showing my PowerPoint. Okay, I'll just do entire screen.
And then you can play the PowerPoint, and that should work, I think.
Okay. Do y'all see the...
Not coming up still.
Oh my gosh. Oh well. I'm about to give up.
Hey, I saw that comment, Super Shadow. Nicest Austin debate, although not a high bar. I am very nice, you mother. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Now I'm sharing.
Okay. Yep, I got you.
Got it? All right, there you go.
Okay. Can y'all see it now?
I just clicked that. There you go.
You did it. We knew you could do it.
Oh my gosh. I need to get better. Okay. So the case for creation as the only possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history. So the creation model, it is diametrically opposed to the evolution model. It is supernaturalistic, it's externally directed, it's purposive and completed. It's irreversibly directional. So it goes downward toward lower levels of complexity. The original creation had all the required or desirable elements, qualities, and characteristics, but has since been increasing in entropy and accumulating mutations in all living organisms. Conservation replaced the process of creation. So even though special creation is no longer going on, there are processes designed to sustain and maintain the basic systems that are now in operation. Predictions of the creation model. Life can only come from life. Each kind of organism is distinct from all other kinds. No new kinds are appearing. Mutations are harmful. Natural selection is a conservative process and not a creative process. But some creation scientists view natural selection as non-existent, since nature has no intelligence or selective abilities. Instead, genes within each organism regulate proteins in response to the environment to produce the purposed effect. Also, predictions: there are no ape to human intermediates that have ever existed, and humans are qualitatively distinct from animals. So the origin of life. There are no evolutionary transition from non-life to life. There is no evolutionary process of non-replicating chemicals to self-replicating systems. Life was a unique work of the creation period and is not being created today. It is only being reproduced. And life operates by the principle of conservation and disintegration, not innovation and integration. So this principle of conservation and disintegration is predicted based on the first and second laws of thermodynamics. So this is a comparison between the creation model and evolution model. Under the creation model, kind is the basic created unit. So humans are mankind. In the evolution model, humans are classified in the animal kingdom. And I won't go into all of this, but we see that.
No. No. I think we lost her. I think maybe her computer finally died there.
I think we had a hiccup. We all kind of glitched there.
Yeah, I think either that or maybe her computer died. She did say that her power was running out. Yeah, R.I.P. to Katrina's computer. Yeah, she said she had a power outage. So yeah, we're sending prayers for Katrina's computer.
I think she said she could switch to her phone. So give her a
we'll give her
a moment, and very nice.
Yeah, it's been super delightful discussion.
Yeah, I didn't have to tell either one of you to behave or anything. So.
I know, we've made it easy for you.
I'm just sitting here chilling.
So I'm curious, members of the audience. Oh, here we go. She's back.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're all right.
I live in Podunk, Georgia. So we have no electricity still.
Hope it comes back on soon.
Me too. So anyway, that was my PowerPoint. I don't have it downloaded on my phone, so we can go into your other subtopics if you'd like.
I like that PowerPoint. That was one of the more scientific conceptions of creationism I've seen. You did a pretty good job on that. Yeah, I think let's pick up back at irreducible complexity.
Okay.
So I want to ask, what is your best example of an irreducibly complex biological system?
It is any system that cannot function with all of its important component parts that allow it to function. So in other words, like within the cell, there are certain parts that are essential for the function of the cell. If those parts are missing, then the cell goes through cell death. As far as humans are concerned, if you have a human that doesn't have a heart, if the heart's missing, the human is going to die. It's going to be dead. So any living organism that cannot function as its purpose to function without all of its component parts will die, and that is what irreducible complexity is.
I get the concept, but I'm looking for like a specific example. You said, like, for example, you said humans will die without their heart. So is a circulatory system a good example of an irreducibly complex system?
Well, a human is an example. I mean, so you have to have a heart, you have to have a brain, you have to have lungs. So if you don't have those parts, that makes us irreducibly complex. So it's the whatever is the, and Behe gave the example of a mousetrap. So if you have a mousetrap that doesn't have a spring, it's not a mousetrap. It's not going to function. Of course, you can use a mousetrap for something else, but it's not a mousetrap. So it doesn't function according to its purpose, what it was made to function for. So with the idea of evolution, if you have let's say you have chemicals that are hypothetically trying to formulate a cell, you have to wait for all of the components to be present in order for it to function. But what are you doing waiting for all those things to function? Like, for example, the dinosaur to bird, I guess what evolutionists think that dinosaurs evolved into birds. Well, birds have this complicated flight system that is specifically, I mean, if you have any part that's missing of that flight system, the bird's not going to fly. And even with the
Can I ask for an example of a specific part where if it's missing, the bird won't be able to fly anymore?
Well, it's not just the wings, it's the nerves, it's the muscles, it's the, birds have hollow bones. They have navigating systems. All of that is part of a bird's anatomy. And without the simplest, without the essential parts for it to fly, it's not going to function properly. So that is what makes it irreducibly complex, is those those parts of the organism that make it a functioning organism, a live organism.
Hey, be nice, Dane. I know you're the crazy guy and you love to say provocative things, but be nice to Katrina. She's been very nice so far. So, okay. Sorry, I lost my train track there. Thought a little bit.
I can't even see the comments.
So, in the instance of the bird, if it loses a part, if its bones become less hollow or more heavy, it definitely won't be able to fly as well anymore. Do you think it will not be able to fly at all, or that those parts still won't be useful for locomotion or some other thing that a biological system could benefit from?
No, it's not just the beneficial part. So irreducible complexity is the notion that if you're missing an essential
part of what makes you that organism, then you're not going to, it's not conducive to survival. It's not conducive to life. For example, I can't think of many examples because of most organisms are, you can function without an arm. You can function without a leg. I mean, we have amputees all the time. We even have people who are born without certain functions, but a human cannot function without a lung. So that is part of the irreducibly complex, I guess, organ that makes us human, or that makes us alive.
Yeah, my conception of irreducible complexity would be something where you remove any part of it and it becomes completely useless. I think if you remove a part and it still has some use, that use can be exapted and developed upon. But that's fine. Before we move one step closer to concluding, is there any other like really good examples of irreducible complexity you want to throw at us?
Well, I mean, so not really, because what makes an organism function is all of its parts that make it function or make it alive. So if you're transitioning, like hypothetically, if a land animal were transitioning to a whale, then how is it going to survive until it has its blowhole on the top of its head? Or how is it going to survive if it doesn't have fins yet? Or why, how would it survive when it is waiting for all of the parts to be developed? Or even there, so we suppose, according to evolution, we supposedly all came from one common ancestor. The entire diversity of life came from one common ancestor. Well, how did that come to be while all of the parts are waiting to be developed? There's no way that could have happened. A fish could not have turned into a frog, or I don't know, whatever it is you think that fish turned into. We have never seen anything like it in life, and it is impractical for millions of years to pass by for these organisms to develop these parts necessary to survive. I mean, it's a neat concept, but it didn't happen. It could not have happened that way because of how life functions now.
My response, what immediately comes up in my brain, especially when you were talking about the whale ancestors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer would be is that if a whale ancestor like Basilisaurid or Dorudon was behaving like a whale, yeah, it probably wouldn't be successful. If it was using a full suite of whale behaviors, it would have a hard time. But I don't think it would. I think as an organism's morphology and its phenotype changes as genetic alleles shift, its behavior will also shift.
Within its lifetime?
No, I would say generation to generation. Behavior's interesting.
Well,
there's a lot of like ecological interaction that occurs in the shaping of behavior, and a lot of it stems from neurology and your hormones, and the ecology is a major part of it. The ecological interactions, and that doesn't have to be just with other living organisms. That can be with non-living things. There's all kinds of ecological interactions. There's, predation, there's sexual contact, there's, commensalism, mutualism, symbiosis, there's even parasitism. So I think there's lots of ways that the ecological interactions are sustainable based on the various morphologies that occur as radiative adaptation plays out.
Well, I think complexity is a problem for evolution because so we only have 4 nucleotides that make up DNA. They have not evolved. It's still the same 4 nucleotides throughout all of life history, but they are arranged in such a way that they make different proteins for different animals in different organisms, and they perform different functions. So that is why you can look at the genes of 2 different animals, and they will look similar because all you have to choose from are 4 nucleotides in the DNA. However, the genomes, you can have a few base pairs different, and it'll be a totally different protein that's developed. The complexity of life is such that evolution could not have brought about the complexity.
You think there's a stability issue to kind of steel man? Is that accurate?
Not necessarily a stability issue. It's just that there's no way that this all could have happened by chance. There's no way that this all could have happened by blind, random mutations. There's no way that this could have happened by just environmental changes, because
that's an interesting historical point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to.
Well, evolution is based on history. It's not based on what's going on right now.
Well, what I was talking about is that the development of evolutionary science and the history of evolution, before evolution was like the concepted scientific consensus, the consensus was that it wasn't possible, it wasn't rational, because you can't get, complex interdependent systems by just random chance. And they couldn't see how random changes could produce orderly, consistent, morphology. But then Darwin, our good friend Noel Chucky Darwin, and his buddy Alfie, they came up with the natural selection, which is not random. Natural selection is very specific, non-random process by which the organisms with the greatest traits for survival and reproduction, they go on to pass their genes on, and organisms that don't have especially fit traits, or they have extremely non-fit traits, they don't survive, they don't reproduce and pass on their organisms. That's the non-random part of it that can create orderly, consistent, at least that is the scientific community's consensus. So that it's interesting. You definitely would have some pretty scientific big boys standing with you shoulder to shoulder there, like Cuvier and Buffon and all those guys.
Right. Well, I agree that that's the consensus, but the consensus is wrong, because Charles Darwin got his ideas from looking at artificial selection, where there was a end goal, and the breeders would breed specific animals for the goal that they wanted. Nature cannot see goals. Nature is inanimate. Nature cannot select anything. What nature does is just exist as a conduit for animals breeding and repopulating their environments.
That is the way in which nature selects things. That is my understanding of natural selection, is that the way nature selects things is by the natural inclination for organisms with the highest fitness to survive the longest and reproduce the most.
Well, that's not reality though. Highest fitness doesn't make, I mean, so the artificial selection has an end goal. So you want your sheep to produce more wool.
Yeah.
That's the end goal. And that is what artificial selection, they choose the sheep that will produce the sheep with the most wool production. How can nature see an end goal and then start producing and selecting which animals are joined to which animals? Nature doesn't do that. Nature cannot do that. That is impossible because nature is not a intelligent being. Nature is not an intelligent anything. It exists to be a conduit for the survival of animals.
It is my view that nature does that just by being hard to survive in. It's difficult to survive in nature. There's predators. There's not enough resources for every individual to survive and produce offspring. And in that way, natural selection is capable. The end goal is survival and reproduction. And so for like an organism like a peacock, that was confounding to Darwin. He couldn't figure out why nature would produce a bird with this big, hefty, clunky, inefficient, predator eye-catching tail feather until he realized that the sexual selection side of it is why. Because even though that feature gave it some difficulty surviving in nature, it also allowed it to reproduce significantly more, the more feathers, the more attractive of a tail feather that specific individual had. It's interesting.
So Darwin just made that up and it's been proven false.
Okay, I can't argue with that. So before we start heading into conclusions and then we'll try and take some Q&A, I want to ask, is there anything else, what the strongest data you have that does not support evolution? If you haven't brought any specific things up yet, I would like to hear them now.
Well, that was what my PowerPoint was about, but
oh no.
But I can just read you what I have left. It's about a few more minutes if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see, what was I?
I think the last thing we were on before you went dark is we were comparing evolution,
creation model and the evolutionary model comparison.
Yeah.
So I think hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Are y'all there? I'm sorry.
We're here. Can you hear us?
Okay, yeah, I can now. So I'll just start with the evolution model is incapable of explaining the origin of human language. So the creation model does that. In the creation model, mankind was fully formed and functional with complex thought and speech. And fossils are either apes or humans. There are no intermediate forms. Whereas in the evolution model, individual fossil hominids and hominoids show various evolutionary stages of pre-humans according to the evolution model, but their interpretations of fossils are heavily influenced by personal beliefs and prejudices. Paleoanthropology is the most subjective and contentious field of biology. Individual specimens can be reconstructed in a variety of ways, and the fossil record cannot establish ancestor-descendant relationships. The complexity of life is a problem for evolution. because interdependent parts do not function unless other parts are also present. None of the biological systems work until all the necessary components are present and working. And we discussed this when we were talking about irreducible complexity. Non-functioning essential components are detrimental to survival. So, for example, a muscle is useless without the connected nerves directing contraction, and both muscles and nerves are useless without the complicated control mechanism of the brain. So that's irreducible complexity entails all that. The nature of DNA is such that evolutionary processes could not have caused this circular interdependent existence of life. So for DNA to be useful, it needs a huge complement of repair enzymes to maintain it. These enzymes are also coded in the DNA, and DNA cannot be sustained in the cell without them. And without DNA, life cannot exist, and DNA cannot exist outside the living cell. So this is a circular existence that's interdependent, and evolution could not have caused that circular existence. It's like kind of like a chicken and the egg kind of scenario.
Yeah, I've heard that analogy before.
Oh, so genetic mutations. Evolution model predicts that mutations are beneficial and generate a vertical change upward toward higher degrees of order. The creation model prediction is that if there are real mutations causing vertical changes in complexity and order of the kinds, they will be harmful, not beneficial. Experimental facts support the creation model. So experimentally, mutations are random, they're not directed. Mutations are rare, they're not common. Beneficial mutations are extremely rare. Biochemical mutations do not affect an organism's morphology, no matter its benefits. In most cases, like with antibiotic resistance or the four-winged fruit fly, these flies are unable to fly, and the antibiotic resistance is basically an antibiotic is poisoning the bacteria, and resistance comes because mutations alter the bacteria's molecules just enough to avoid the poisoning. Mutations affect and are affected by many genes. So, and the net effect of all mutations is harmful. So mutations do not cause an upward evolution of anything. What they do is destroy the organism. Hello?
Drop Austin.
Sorry, phone issues.
Okay.
He's back.
So did you hear where I said mutations affect and are affected by many genes, and they also are the net effect of all mutations is harmful. So it prevents an upward evolution of complexity. So how evolution fails. All components of an organism that are necessary for survival must be functioning simultaneously. Genetic mutations cause damage to the genome, thus leading to reduced survivability in living organisms. Most all mutations are either slightly deleterious or lethal. The mutation rate in living organisms is rapid, and the mutations are accumulative. Mutations arise faster than selection can eliminate them. Mutations are overwhelmingly too subtle to be selectable. Bad mutations are often physically linked to good mutations because causing them to not be separated in inheritance, resulting in all higher genomes being degenerate. A process that steadily degrades a genome cannot produce a better organism. The improbability of life occurring in the simplest cell with the corresponding molecular complexity vastly exceeds 1 chance in 10 to the 150th. New kinds of organisms have never been observed to have evolved by random mutations. So moving on. So the basic facts of science fit the special creation model much better than they do the evolution model. Evolution cannot be determined from science. So both creation and evolution cannot be determined from science because they both happened in the past. We don't see evolution occurring now. Evolution is probably on the same level as creation. The rescue device for evolution is a long process too slow for observation, which renders the experimental method an impossibility when applied to evolution. So my PowerPoint goes on to describe why creation would be a better choice, but I wasn't able to get into that. But the creation model is supported by the first and second laws of thermodynamics. The first law is conservation. The second law is disintegration. The creation model explains the origin of life, while the evolution model cannot. The creation model holds that each kind of animal reproduces the same kind of offspring in every generation as observed in all of nature. The complexity of life is supported by the creation model, but it is a problem for the evolution model. The creation model makes predictions that are supported by experimentation. The creator revealed his creation work to holy prophets by his word. So we can read in the Bible about what happened, although we cannot determine how it happened in detail. And that's it. So that's why I believe that creation is the only possible solution to unanswered questions about natural history.
That is the thing to prove, right? If we're gonna change the scientific consensus, that is what we need to tackle. So I am so glad you stepped up here today to do your best to do that. And it's been just lovely talking to you. You're a very intelligent and very polite and cordial person. I've really enjoyed our discussion. And I'm rooting for you with your PhD and all the stuff you're doing in your career. Definitely, you have my support on that, and I've loved our conversation. So I do want to respond to two things before we move on to closing statements.
Before you move on, Austin, I did get a request if we could get Katrina to email her PowerPoint to you.
We want your PowerPoint, Katrina.
So we can take a look at it. We would appreciate it.
Please and thank you. So I want to say, gosh, now I forget. Oh, well, you were talking about mutations. Mm-hmm. I think you did say that there are beneficial mutations. Yes, or you said no beneficial mutations.
So the beneficial mutations that
they're rare.
They're rare, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second law of thermodynamics. How would you define the second law?
Well, the basic definition is that entropy is always increasing, and that is in every system. They say that it's only in closed systems, but if you look at all systems, entropy is always increasing unless you find energy is always being used up. Things are always running down. Like even in our bodies, what causes us to age is telomere shortening within the chromosomes, and so you have to have a new source of energy in order to replenish the energy that's being lost. That does not mean that energy is not being lost, because it is. So everything is winding down, everything is cooling off, everything is being used up. So that is the process that we're going through now, is a process of life and death. Things are being born, things are dying.
I'm not trying to be a little kid asking why right now, but can I also get a definition for entropy?
Entropy is it's the energy or the heat or that is being used or processed for I don't know the technical definition for it. I know what it is, but it's the energy or heat that is being transferred
It's
or
the level of admixture in a system, right? Like molecules getting mixed up, energy getting mixed up, and then they slowly dissipate too.
right. That's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so I recently actually read a paper that, gosh, I wish I had it at my fingertips right now, but it says it scientifically made an argument that I've been making for a long time about
Mhm.
the second law of thermodynamics. And that is that I actually think the second law of thermodynamics supports evolution. I know that people kind of tend to interpret it like things will get more decayed, they'll get more eroded. But I
Mhm.
think it's the admixture part of it that supports evolution. The second law of thermodynamics says all the energy and all the matter and mass will get all churned up and mixed up. And that is necessary for the elements and the compounds that form biomolecules for those to emerge. So I actually think the second law kind of supports evolution. I can kind of see how people interpret it as a problem for it, though. So I,
Well,
I
so if
won't argue
you,
with you too much on that one, but
if you think
I
about
think there is
water,
a perspective.
if you think about water, water flows in the path of least resistance, and gases, they go to, well, I'll use water. Water flows in the path of least resistance. So if you're trying to build something up, you have to add more parts. You have to produce more energy. You have to provide more energy to it. So naturally, what we see around us in nature are things losing energy. We see things
Oh, yeah.
losing, like even with the DNA, the mutations are causing loss of genetic material. It's not causing any kind of gain.
The thing that comes to my mind is bioenergetics and ecology, that you lose significant energy at each stage of the trophic levels. The
Mhm.
producers get consumed by the primary consumers, and in that process 90% of the energy is lost. So maybe you should check out, have you studied any ecology at all, or
Study what? I'm sorry.
ecology?
Ecology? Not
Yeah,
much.
you should check it out. I think you would like it.
Okay.
So if that is if you're satisfied there, are you ready to move into some concluding statements?
Oh, sure.
And would you rather go first, or shall I?
You can go first.
Okay. Well, the concluding statement I prepared, I pretty much have to throw it out because I thought you were going to say yes to the subject answer. I thought you were going to say, yeah, they will look different and they won't be able to produce fertile hybrid offspring. So you completely threw me for a loop there, Katrina. Uh, I guess my concluding statement would be that as nice as Katrina has been and as generous to her as I want to be, I still just don't think we're even close to a statistically significant level of data and statistical analysis of verifiable facts that don't support evolution. If in the best case scenario, it would be like totally overwhelming. It would be like things are always irreducibly complex. It would be like there is no major change in the geological column. And I think that that kind of data, it's just not going to show up because evolution is true. And that is my takeaway. So for those watching, I urge you to consider the implications of this discussion. I do want to restate that evolution isn't an attack on faith. It's a powerful, quantifiable, and falsifiable scientific explanation for a mountain of evidence, and it has incredible predictive and explanatory power. It has robust endeavors based on it, and it continues to grow. And I think between the two, it's definitely the better quantifiable, falsifiable, possible solution to unanswered questions and unsolved problems about our study and, recapitulation of natural history. And with that, I can conclude my closing statement and let you make yours, Katrina.
Okay. So I think the opposite. I think that evolution is falsifiable. It has been falsified, and it is just being kept alive because the consensus of people who do not want to consider creation as a viable model are just resistant to it, and they're not really looking at the evidence honestly, because if you look at history, both creation and evolution are historical. They both cannot be repeated. They both cannot be tested. They both have to be taken on faith. But we do have evidence in real life that more supports the creation model. For example, mutations are happening that produce more detrimental effects. We have the first and second laws of thermodynamics. There is no new energy that can be created. There is no, everything is winding down. Everything is going downhill. Even with humans, comparing humans from maybe 1,000 years ago to the humans of today, we are kind of different. We're still human, but we have lost some of our some of the genetics that make up us as more survivable individuals. We have more diseases now. We have more problems. We have worse eyesight. We're getting worse. And even in the animal kingdom, that is happening. And even in the fossil record, all we see are extinctions. We don't see any kind of transitions. We see animals that have gone extinct. Why did they go extinct? Because there were, well, besides the flood and the environment that happened after the flood, they went extinct because of the environmental changes. So the environment is against survivability. No matter what environment you're in, the survivability is within the genetic makeup of us. We were made to survive, but because of the fall and because of sin, our world was changed, and it was changed for the worse. So the creation model is the best answer for unanswerable questions that we may have as far as natural history goes. And keep in mind, it's talking about natural history. It's not talking about now. It's talking about natural history. So when we look at history, both have to be taken on faith, but what evidence would steer you more toward one or the other?
That's really interesting. That's so interesting. I kind of would have expected like to say one isn't but the other is. Like I feel like most people on either side of the aisle, they would say the one they disagree with isn't and the one they agree with is, but you kind of said both are. That's really interesting. And I think you're when you're talking about like we only see extinctions, have you ever heard of Cuvier?
No.
That was one of his brainchildren. It's called catastrophism. And he was like a bigwig in paleontology. You should check him out.
I've heard about catastrophism. I don't know who the name of the
Yeah, Cuvier. He was a French naturalist, did a lot of paleontology, and that was he was a big proponent of species fixity, but he saw changes in the fossil record and he explained them with catastrophism. Really fascinating. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this back and forth, this exchange. This has been so fun. I really found your answers and your arguments very interesting and thought-provoking. Thank you so much for coming up and doing this. If you're ready now, Dave, do you have some questions put together for us? Oh, you're muted, Dave.
Ember just dropped a question for the Q&A. Speaking of,
yep, let's.
You want to click on it?
Yeah.
Or you want me to just read it for you?
Here, I'll put it up together.
Ember wants to know for both of you, if matter energy cannot be created, how do you each explain how matter energy came to be? With remembering it cannot be created.
Do you want to take this one first, Katrina?
Yeah. So for the thermodynamics, the first law of thermodynamics to be true, it has to be talking about natural processes. Of course, it cannot be created through natural processes. There's no natural process that we know of that can create or destroy matter and energy completely, because they are conserved. One turns into the other, depending on the situation. But by supernatural means, matter was created. So God is a supernatural being. So these things can be, nature could not have produced this. Nature can't defy the first and second laws of thermodynamics. However, God is supernatural. He's not part of nature. He's not part of the universe. He's outside of it, communicating with it. So he, by supernatural means, was matter and energy created.
All right. I'll take a crack at it then if you're done there, Katrina.
Mhm.
All right. Great question. I don't know. That would be my main answer. I think it's possible maybe that it wasn't created, that the energy just existed and it just changed form. It didn't have to be created, that you still have to explain why it changed form. And I don't know that one either. But I'm fairly, I would say, confident, at least, if not convinced, that it isn't a supernatural answer.
We also had a request. Dade Murphy suggests recommending The Blind Watchmaker by Richard Dawkins. Katrina may want to read it about well, she needs to read it. Can we recommend The Blind Watchmaker by Richard Dawkins? So there's a recommendation for you.
Okay, I have heard many people talk about The Blind Watchmaker, and I've seen excerpts from it, and he is totally wrong on just about everything that he talks about. But I will read it.
Okay.
I saw a question that I like. I think this one's for you, Katrina, but I'm very interested to hear the answer. What about people like me who are theists? What's my motive?
I'm not a mind reader. You have to tell me what your motive is.
I
answer for me that it's logic, facts, evidence, data.
full analysis. Those are the kinds of things.
Try that again, Austin. You dropped out.
Sorry. I was getting a phone call. I was just saying I can answer for me. My motivation is logic, statistics, data analysis, testability, predictive power. Those would be the things that really brought me onto the evolution side of things.
We've got another one from Ember. I think it was when you were talking about the evolution from land to water. There are dolphins without blowholes. They have a harder time, but they can breathe through their mouths. And
Okay,
answers.
so that is a detrimental effect of mutations. It's not evolving into something better. So yeah, they have a hard time because mutations are mainly either neutral or detrimental or lethal.
And Answers in Atheism was pointing out the liver is a good example of something that functions all the way from a cluster of arteries to a fully functioning mammalian liver. So the liver is a good example of something I think he's saying is not irreducibly complex.
That may be true, but a person cannot live without a liver.
Here's one from Ember. She's got a lot of questions for you, Katrina.
Okay.
Q&A, forgive me if this is rude, but as creationism depends on the Bible being literally true, are bats birds?
Well, according to modern taxonomy, they're not birds, but the reason the Bible listed it as bird is because they included things that fly as birds and things that it's a classification system that is different. Classification is for communication. So for ancient people to understand what birds are, it's the things that fly in the air. So it doesn't have anything to do with them being mammals or flying things or whatever. It's not that kind of taxonomic classification system was not existent in the Bible. So the Bible is still literally true, but it just names bats as birds because they fly.
Okay. And Ember, you know I love you, but I got to be a little pedantic. There are more than versions of creationism than just Christian creationism. So it's not necessarily the case that creationism depends on the Bible being true. But I get where you were coming from. Definitely, I think, Katrina, you would agree that your version of creationism does involve biblical, literal truth, right?
Yes.
To some degree, at least. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to misrepresent you, so I'll always give you a chance to check.
And there's another one from Ember here for the professor. How do you explain to your students about the function of seasonal vaccines in a way that doesn't involve evolution?
Can you put that on screen?
Yeah.
At 5:32 mark there.
I just explained to them that they need to get vaccinated because, well, I don't really talk about vaccinations because it's not something that I teach personally, but there is natural immunity and there is what's the other besides natural immunity?
Inherited immunity.
Inherited immunity. Yeah. And so I go in that area. We talk about natural and inherited immunity. And there's a whole entire lecture on viruses. So evolution doesn't even come up.
I'm glad that you recommend to your students to vaccinate. That's definitely the right move. We're in 100% agreement on that. I think that was all the questions. I didn't see any other ones.
I see one more from Ember. If you go to the 5:19 mark.
I don't know how to trace the marks. It's just
the timestamp. The timestamp.
Okay. Yeah, here we go. 5:19. Oh, my stream roll there ends at 5:30.
Okay, well, at 5:19, Ember asks, what test would Katrina suggest that might distinguish between creation and evolution?
Basically, the first and second laws of thermodynamics is my favorite go-to because the first law states that matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed, but they are conserved. And then the second law of thermodynamics says that entropy is always increasing or something to that effect. It's more into it than that. But so you have to have something created or something in order for the second law to be true. It had to have a beginning. And in order for the first and second laws to be true, they have to exist in the first place. So there's a circular mechanism there that you can't get away from, and nothing in nature can cause that.
Austin, there's one in here for you as well from Doxon Box, DOKNBOX. I believe it was about the free floating thing. Are you trying to talk about slow viruses, which are particles of DNA that are associated with diseases like mad cow, Kuru, and Creutzfeldt-Jacobi?
Creutzfeldt-Jacobi, yeah.
Creutzfeldt-Jacobi.
I am not sure. I was just introduced to viroids for the first time in my biology lab class on Wednesday. No idea. Sorry, it's such a good question. I wish I could. I don't know. Maybe.
And that gets me scrolled up to the top. So,
Yes. But
there
we
you are.
had some new questions roll in. Ember said, "Get a used copy if you get the Blind Watchmaker. Don't give Dawkins money." I support that. He's been kind of not so great of a figure lately. She asked a follow-up here, and I'm not sure what the context exactly of this follow-up is. Maybe she can post another comment explaining it, but it says, can we demonstrate either of these explanations? I assume she's talking about, either creation or evolution, or but if she can, maybe you can clarify for us, Ember, what you're talking about.
Well, I have an answer. So you cannot demonstrate creation or evolution because the premise of evolution is that these things happen in the past and we hope for them to occur in the future. With creation, we say that it did happen in the past, and what's going on now is sustenance and just sustaining and maintaining. So what evidence more supports what model is more supported by what we can see now? I believe the creation model is supported by what we can see now and test. So one thing that you can test is they've done the E. coli experiment. They've done 75,000 generations of E. coli, and all they have are E. coli. And the only difference is that the E. coli that they have produced, some of them can digest citrus or citrate. Well, there was already wild type E. coli that could also do that whenever they were in that kind of environment. So it's a genetic feature that was dormant until they had to develop that new feature. It was just turned on. So genes work in awesome ways to promote the survivability of an organism. So I think we can see things in real time. And one other that I mentioned is the yeast experiment. Some researchers had taken just regular baker's yeast that has 18 chromosomes, and they reduced it down to one chromosome. Well, the one chromosome was still basically the same type of organism as the parent yeast, but it was just smaller. So there were no significant phylogenetic differences except for shorter chromosomes. So I think creation better explains that. There was nothing new added.
Are you familiar with polyploidy? Have you ever heard of polyploidy?
Not that one, no.
It's an interesting phenomena that happens in genetic replication when DNA replicates itself, where sometimes it'll create several copies of the same gene.
Mm-hmm.
And polyploidy is when it does it for the entire genome. It duplicates the genome telomere to telomere and creates an entire, so it's basically doubling, tripling, quadrupling, sometimes octupling the amount of genetic material. And that specific genetic phenomena is the reason we get huge gobbing strawberries that are so big and they taste
right. I have heard of that.
Yeah.
You got
Ember
birds.
clarified that
Okay.
the question, the follow-up was about, can we demonstrate our answer for where did matter or energy come from? Mine's easy to demonstrate. I'll demonstrate for you me not knowing right now. Done. Okay, that was pretty easy.
Well,
Or-
and my answer is God created it. And the reason I say God created it is because the first and second laws of thermodynamics are working together in tandem. It's not one against the other. They both have to work simultaneously. You can't get that from nature. That can only come from a supernatural source.
All right.
Birds are dinosaurs at 622.
Yes. This one?
Above that.
What
Well,
about
that one too. Yeah.
Question. Creation can be made to fit the data because we don't know the rules. A nested hierarchy could be created, but it also couldn't. But evolution demands it. That's what makes it testable. I'm not sure there was a question in there.
I'm
Do you
not sure.
you want to respond, Katrina?
Well, I mean, a nested hierarchy is just is what you think happened. You're still explaining the past. You're not explaining something that is being done now, today. All you see are animals reproducing the same kind of animal, generation after generation after generation after generation, unless there's artificial selection from humans. That's an intelligent source. An intelligent mind is putting together these animals to make them produce a certain goal function or a goal modification. So nested hierarchy is just something that is thought to have happened in the past, but we don't see it.
I would like to respond to that a little bit. I don't think it's that nested hierarchy is something that happened in the past. As far as I can tell, nested hierarchy is the shape that emerges when you try to taxonomize living things. It was a difficulty for Carl Linnaeus, who was a creationist who believed in species fixity, when he had cataloged a significant enough portion of the table of living organisms that nested hierarchy started to emerge. His philosophical views were challenged. They were brought into question, and he started to see common ancestry as more of a possibility. And I think today, even a lot of creation models accept some level of common ancestry and nested hierarchy. Like, for instance, we would both agree that all of the species in the taxonomic category of aves, all the birds, have a common ancestor, right? Or no?
Well, I don't agree with that. I know that Answers in Genesis, that's their view. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
And
Here's one from
I think he
Breakfast
had one.
Tacos.
Yeah, breakfast tacos looks like the last one there.
Question. Does she have a competitive scientific hypothesis to better explain the data that the theory of evolution explains, or maybe an alteration to the theory of evolution? Obviously, the data exists.
The data is not obvious that it supports evolution. My only competitive scientific hypothesis is creation model. Both the creation model and the evolutionary model are taken on faith because they're both describing history. We don't see evolution happening now. Most of the data that we have is neutral, but you have to, in order to look at neutral data, you have to determine what the predictions are. The creation model has better predictions, like looking at the fossil history. Early on in looking at fossils, they found fossils that look like humans. They look like apes in between or whatever. But now that we have more data, we're finding that human and ape fossils are either humans or apes. And those in-betweens were subjective according to what the artist decided it would be. You get a few bones, like in the case of Lucy, there were so few bones that you could not determine that was a Australopithecus or whatever it is she's supposed to be.
Australopithecus.
Australopithecus. It was a chimpanzee,
Horrendous.
more likely a chimpanzee,
Just
or
means
some kind of
southern
extinct,
African ape, basically.
some kind of ape that may have gone extinct. So the evidence is neutral. It is not. It is the interpretation of the evidence that makes the model. And we just have two different worldviews. And so if you have an evolutionary worldview, you're going to go with the evolution model. If you have a creationist worldview, you're going to have go with the creation model. But what are those specific things that determine which model would be the best fit? And like I said, it would be what we see now. Animals are only reproducing the same animal. We see artificial selection going on, and they are still producing the basic offspring that the parents are. We see the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Evolution could not have caused anything to have grown or to have gone from non-life to life. There's no example of abiogenesis outside of God creating man from the dust. The scientific piece is missing from both evolution and creation. But so you have to interpret the data based on what I guess your worldview is.
It's so funny that you qualify the creation of Adam as an instance of abiogenesis. My friend Ian Chen, he's had debates with Kent Hovind about that exact subject. And I feel like it would be so easy to admit that, yeah, that's exactly what that is definitionally. But for some reason, Hovind can't bring himself to do it. And it was a really funny debate because he couldn't. But yeah, no, that's interesting. We had a couple questions roll in here.
Okay.
If you still have the energy to keep going.
Oh, sure.
All right. Ember says, follow up. Cool. How can we verify the proposed supernatural source? If that source is a god, which god that is, and how we can possibly know what that god wants?
So to verify the proposed supernatural source is, again, the first and second laws of thermodynamics. You know that nothing natural, nothing material could have caused both the first and second laws of thermodynamics to happen simultaneously. So it is outside the realm of nature. So that is your first clue. If the source is a god, we know that there is purpose in creation because there's an end goal. You can only get an end goal from an intelligent being. You can only get information from an intelligent being. This world is full of information. There's DNA information. We have language. We think logically. So that is why that source is a God. Which God that is, the only way you can know which God that is because this God has to be eternal. He could not have been created. And most of the false gods have been created from some source. The ancients thought that the earth was eternal and that the gods were born from the earth or from the afterlife or from whatever kind of source they thought it was. But God is the only one who is uncreated. He is the only one who did not need a creator. He's the only one who is eternal. And so going down that logical piece is how I know that, we can know that it's a supernatural source and who that source is.
Have you ever heard of presuppositionalism?
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of sounds basically presup.
Yeah.
Idea, right? Yeah. Okay.
I just want to remind everyone that at the top of the hour, Joe will be doing a debate as well with the Hawaiian shirt guy. So check that out. I put a link in the chat over there. It's at a new channel. Let's debate.
So we have another one from Breakfast Tacos. Follow up. So what is the creation model and what novel predictions does it make? I'm really interested in the answer to this one too.
Okay, so I was going through that in my PowerPoint. I do have it listed here in the PowerPoint. So the creation model, let me go back to it. The predictions of the creation model are that, I'm running out of light here. So life can only come from non-life, and that is all we see in nature. Each kind of organism is distinct from all others. Um, no new kinds are appearing, and they won't appear. Mutations are harmful, and they will not be overly beneficial. Um, natural selection is a conservative process, not a creative process. So natural selection cannot make something new. It cannot produce a new evolved animal. Natural selection is only a conservative process. No ape to human intermediates have ever existed, nor will they be found. And humans are qualitatively distinct from animals.
That's a good list. And it seems accurate, and I do like that they're actually divergent from evolution. A lot of times you ask creationists that question and they'll tell you, oh well, the evidence will look exactly the same. You went a different direction, and I think it's a little more quantifiable. So Ember had this question near the start. Are broccoli, cabbage, kale, and other veggies all the same kind? How do we tell what kinds are outside of mammal morphology?
Well, broccoli, cabbage, kale, and other veggies are, I guess they could be the same kind, but they're still different. Broccoli, cabbage, kale, and other veggies all taste different. So you can categorize them all as the same kind, or you can categorize them differently. It just depends. With artificial selection of the plant kingdoms, it is what it is. I mean, you still have material that you started out with. They're not evolving; they're just changing. They still have the basic makeup. And one caveat to that, in the Bible, vegetables are not considered as life. Only things that have blood are considered life.
That's how the Bible defines life, is things with blood?
I believe, from what I read, yeah. It
Well,
doesn't.
I think blood and breath are the two.
Yeah, blood and breath. Yeah, so
Yeah.
breath also.
I like the conventional scientific definition of life. I like the moves and uses energy and produces waste, and it takes and uses materials, and it grows and develops, and it reproduces, and it responds to stimuli, possesses some level of basic organization. I think that's a better definition of life, but that's fair. I think Ember pulled a little bit of a sneaky with this one, because I don't know if you know this, Katrina. Broccoli, cabbage, kale,
yeah, same family.
They're all G. brassica. Yeah.
So I knew that, but I mean, we still call them different names, and they're still, I mean, they were created through artificial selection. They're not, one is not evolved over another, or is not a higher order over the other. They're just different.
Well, they all derive from an ancestor species.
Right.
Yeah. So, I have seen multiple follow up on the. You are getting a lot of questions. I'm trying to give you some of the better ones here that are a little clearer and more direct. Follow up on the first and second law. If those are the reason to suspect supernatural involvement, they can't also be the demonstration. I could claim a salad did it and cite the same laws to back it up. Oh, that's not a question. That's another statement. Oh, here's a question. My bad.
Well, I can answer her question. Salad is part of the universe. Salad could not be outside of the universe. So salad couldn't have done anything. So the reason it's supernatural is because the first and second laws of thermodynamics working in tandem could not have been caused by a natural phenomenon. So naturalism is ruled out.
All right. Spielkab von Sparta, he asks, can you please explain to me the difference between the first, the second, and the third law of thermodynamics?
Well, I'm not even talking about the third law of thermodynamics. I haven't really studied on that one, but I have studied the first and second laws. So I can explain the difference between those two. So the first law of thermodynamics says that matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed, but they are conserved. That's conservation. That means that is a sustenance, sustainability. And with the second law of thermodynamics, entropy is always increasing. That means things are disintegrating. So you have both conservation and disintegration happening simultaneously, and nature could not have produced that.
Okay. Ember asks, if any of those creation predictions are confirmed or falsified, will either of you switch your positions? You've been answering a lot of questions, Katrina. I'll take this one first. You take a second. Ember, the whole point of this debate is that I will go with, and I can even do like a quantum superposition. I'm capable of all kinds of contradictions. I will go with whatever I view as the best, the most comprehensive explanation, the most quantifiable, falsifiable possible solution with the most predictive and explanatory power, the one that better explains all of the facts without having to like select a few facts out or ignore specific facts. That's the one that I want to go with. So that's the whole reason for this debate. So I guess yes, if you were to confirm all those creation predictions or a significant number of them, I would definitely at least be less firmly on the evolution side. I might like move to a wall sitting position.
Well, I have already seen how evolution has been falsified, so I would not change my position.
Follow-up. What does each new organism is distinct from another mean? We literally share DNA. Wouldn't bacteria evolving to eat plastic and citric acid be sufficient evidence of natural selection?
No. So new organisms being distinct from another is not the same as the same bacteria eating plastic or citric acid. So it's the same bacteria. It's still, there's nothing phylogenetically different about that bacteria. It's just a dormant gene that has been upregulated or it has been turned on. So we literally share DNA because we have a literal common designer. You know, if you go to the Ford factory, they're building different kinds of vehicles, but it's the same designer. They're all a Ford. They do look different. They do have diversity. It's the same in the world. I mean, there are differences, but there are similar functions. There are some similar parts. I mean, DNA is made up of the same 4 nucleotides in all of life, yet there's so much diversity because of how they function, because of how they upregulate, downregulate, where they're placed in the genome, and slight differences. There are different enzymes. There's a plethora of complexity that goes into the genome and how we are formed from that. So just because we have the same DNA doesn't mean that we evolve one from another. It doesn't establish causation, but it does establish a common designer, or it doesn't establish ancestral descendant relationship.
I'm glad you brought up the 4 base pairs thing again. So recently, I had an idea about mutations, and it turns out it's kind of parallel thinking. I was wondering if it's possible to have a mutation, which generally a mutation is like an adenine or a thymine is supposed to go there, and instead it puts a cytosine or a guanine, and it causes a change in phenotype, right? I was wondering if it's possible to get a mutation where it's not one of those 4 common base pairs there. And as it turns out, there actually is, which makes a lot of sense considering even DNA replication involves a variety of different forms of RNA. There's messenger RNA, there's transporter RNA, there's decoder RNA. There's like almost a dozen different kinds of RNA. And as it turns out, you can create stable nucleotides using things other than your typical ATCG, the adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. And there's 2 whole fields of study about this that I didn't even know about. They're called unnatural base pair studies and xenonucleic acid studies. I would look into those sometime because it's fascinating. There actually is a possibility that maybe someday it will be more than just those 4 base pairs, or that there's other organisms in an astrobiological sense that aren't constructed by adenine, cytosine, thymine, guanine. It would be interesting to, if we did find that, to try and understand the implications for our form of life on the planet. So it's a cool field.
Yeah. Well, I read the papers you posted in the group, and it is interesting. However, those it still requires laboratory environment. It still requires, intelligent design. These intelligent scientists are going in and manipulating the genes. They're not happening in nature. So maybe it will have implications for medicine or something like that.
So Super Shadow asks, does she consider things like jellyfish or sponges as life?
I'm not sure. They're meat. I don't know.
I would say, I think I can try and steel man you and maybe answer that for you, Katrina. I think, would you say that they don't match the biblical definition of life, but they match the scientific definition of life? They don't breathe or have blood, but they do grow and develop. They do respond to stimuli. They reproduce. They have some level of basic organization, and all that stuff.
So the Bible is not a science book. The caveat to that is that whenever it talks about plants, the plant kingdom, it's not included in those things that are light or living as we know of living, like being able to travel or move or eat or whatever. So the plant kingdom was given to us as food, and it was specifically for food that God created it. So plants are not considered as life according to the Bible, but all animals are considered as living.
Hold on, I gotta let my dog out real quick. Come here, Mia. You want to go outside? One of my side gigs now is I'm dog sitting. It's nice extra money, but man, am I stretched thin. Okay, Breakfast Tacos has another question. I'm not sure what CCC is here, but the question is, what is the study that shows the system couldn't have arisen naturally through natural processes from a quantum field or vacuum, and also disproves CCC that you read that convinced you?
There was not necessarily a study, but knowing the first and second laws of thermodynamics, even in quantum field or a vacuum, that's not going to create matter or energy. It's not creative. It doesn't just create something from nothing. So even if you have a quantum field or you have a vacuum, that's not sufficient enough to bring about to bring forth time or space or matter or energy. So natural means for the beginning of the universe and from non-life to life are ruled out.
And they're asking you some big questions. He says it's conformal cyclic cosmology. I assume that's kind of like the Big Bang Theory, dark matter type conventional physics model. I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's what he's talking about.
Right. So
yeah,
the first and second laws of thermodynamics rule out all matter coming from nothing or being there's nothing in nature that can cause that.
Okay. Spielcab von Sparta, and I promise we're almost done here. He asks, what's your stand on those papers on de novo genes or de novo proteins?
What papers?
I think he's talking about experiments and studies and papers where new genetic, like a de novo gene, like a new gene that's not exactly like another gene. Man,
so
de novo.
they're not truly de novo. They're made from borrowed material. If you manipulate genes, it's just like manipulating. It's just like dog breeders. I mean, it's artificial selection. It's humans manipulating genes in order to get something new. Well, it's not something more evolved. It's just something different. You're borrowing from living material. You're borrowing from what's already existent.
Okay. I think even if you are taking what already exists and you change it, that technically that qualifies. Like if I take a sentence that says, one thing, like, I don't know, the cow is tall, and I change the T to a C. I take the C from cow and I copy it over to T, and now the sentence is the cow is tall. And then maybe, subtle changes can very much alter the meaning of that sentence. I don't know if that makes sense, but
well, it makes sense. But these de novo proteins or these de novo genes are non-functional. They cannot. I mean, most of them are not functional. They can't do anything except survive in a laboratory. So they're and even with those UBPs that you were talking about. I saw when I was reading it, I saw where the organism was trying to overcome that foreign nucleotide. So, I mean, it's not conducive to life. So these de novo proteins that they're building or that they're creating in labs are non-functional. So that's devolution. It's not evolution. Evolution is going from lower complexity to higher complexity, or from going or moving to something better or upward movement. None of these things are showing evolution. They're just showing different.
All right. I think that's all of the audience questions. If you have the energy for it, I have 2 other personal questions I would like to ask because I'm just kind of curious. But we have been going for almost 3 hours. I understand it.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta cook dinner.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What you making?
Yeah,
for dinner?
go ahead. I don't know yet.
Okay. So the first question is, and this is just kind of like it's like a hypothetical heuristic. It's something I use sometimes to try and identify biases and possible weaknesses in my own thinking. And here's the hypothetical. I want you to imagine that you are no longer a young earth creationist. What do you think is likely the story of how that happened?
That's a major hypothetical because
No, that's fair.
even before I became a Christian or knew anything about the Bible, I learned about evolution in class And it just sounded ridiculous to me. I'm like, there's no way that a monkey can become a man. I mean, I found it to be counterintuitive. It was like, this doesn't make sense. It can't happen that way, because all I see are, you know, we're having our own kind. I mean, I don't know. I can't really explain it. I mean, I was only like 12 years old, but I was thinking these things. So,
That's fine. You know what? That kind of perfectly sets up my second question. And that is that if that kind of thought process, that kind of heuristic is not something that you can incorporate into your analysis, what, if anything, do you do to identify and overcome biases in your own thinking? Because biases are a real danger. There's teleological bias, there's confirmation bias, there's overconfidence. And I fully admit that these things could affect my thinking too, but like that heuristic I gave you is an example of me trying to identify and overcome my own bias. So is there anything you do in your thinking to specifically identify and overcome biases? And if so, what is it? What is your technique?
well, I mean, I just try to look at it as maybe this has some relevance, or maybe this has some kind of truth to it. And so I'll, like, when I'm reading papers, I just wrote a paper about chromosome 2, the chromosome 2 fusion. And so I was going through I only use secular articles. So I was going through the papers and I was trying to see, okay, is this possible? And I looked at it like, maybe it is possible, but then I would get to a section where they're adding so many assumptions. It's like, these are only assumptions. So then I fall back on what I already know to be true. And so that's how I try to approach things that I'm looking at in order to find some common ground. But I mean, once I start reading once I find the flaw, the thing that makes it not true, then I fall back on what I know to be true.
Okay. Yeah, this is just something interesting. I've been getting into my psychology class, and I really love it because I think it's one of the ways that psychology can still really help the world is by teaching us critical thinking and helping us identify and overcome our own biases. So I was just kind of curious, but that is all of my questions. That is all of the
one more request. Mike would like to see your paper on chromosome 2, because that's something he works on in that. So yeah, if you could send that in your PowerPoint to Austin in an email, Mike, and he could pass it on to Mike, it would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, thanks for being here, Katrina. And thanks, Austin. Very, very cordial discussion. It was very nice to very refreshing for a change.
I had the koodles of fun. This was a great conversation.
I did too. Time passed by so fast. I didn't even realize it was almost 3 hours.
I know, right? That flew by. Well, I am very happy with that debate. I appreciate you so much for joining. I wish you so much luck in all your endeavors. Keep rocking it. Keep smashing glass ceilings.
I hope the same for you. Be successful in your biology.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our amazing, excellent, nerdy audience members for choosing to come and watch us yap about science for just shy of 3 hours and throwing out all kinds of thought-provoking questions. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. I love you all. And I look forward to doing some more content like this sometime soon. Before we get going, is there anything we want to plug respectively? Katrina, do you have any books you're writing on or anything like that?
No, not writing books yet. Just finished my chromosome 2 paper, like I said, and just researching all this stuff because I love this topic of creation versus evolution.
Totally.
There's going to be another debate starting any time now, and then at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight, I will be doing an after show party. So we're going to be talking about this debate and the debate that's about to start. So everybody's welcome. You are too, Katrina. So hope to see y'all later.
All right. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I have some stuff coming down the pipeline. I'm working on the first episode of a new series I'm planning. It's about the real life biology and science of fantasy creatures. Episode 1 is going to be about ornithanthropes, the bird people, which are common in all kinds of myths, and they're also one of the main options for species to play in all kinds of fantasy role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. So we're going to do a series about those kinds of things, starting with episode 1. We still need to do the second part of the All of the Evidence for Evolution series, which we only covered about half of it. And since then, I found like 30 new fields of science that we have to talk about. So our job got bigger. And those are the two main things that I have coming down the pipeline. So that covers all my plugs. And of course, I got to do the actual plug of, if you haven't liked the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. When Katrina starts her channel, go over there and give her a sub. Of course, sub to Captive Desk. Dave down here, he's got an awesome channel.
Every Saturday, we do Saturday Night at the Atheists at 5 p.m. Eastern time with a panel of atheists, and always a great chat joining us. So, and of course, everybody's welcome, including you too, Katrina. Everybody's welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're a total sweetheart, Katrina. Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience. Thanks to Dave. You guys have a great one. And we're out.